Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is a photo of a boy taken in the 1880s. And by most accounts, he had a very tough life. His family suffered from debt. He narrowly escaped genocide. For years, he couldn't speak. And when he did, around first grade, all he did was whisper to himself. In school, he barely passed his subjects. He barely passed college. When he did pass college and got married, he couldn't find a job in his field. And his dad on his deathbed, even though he was a loving dad, but even on his deathbed, he said about his son that I think he's a failure. So these are the type of dynamics he had to face in his childhood and in his early adulthood. But the one thing he was obsessed with, the one thing that he found solace in, was math. And no matter what was going on in his life, that was the one thing he'd refer to find some peace of mind. So anyways, years go by, he becomes a young man. He goes to work, and he goes to work at that place that his father thought when he was on his deathbed that this man is a failure. Can you hear me, Sohail?
The babies are having a tough time.
Oh, they're having a tough time? I'm sorry. So he goes to work one day while he goes to work one day, he looks out his window and he looks at this clock. And he's been thinking about this question for a long time. And the question is, he asks his coworker, by the way, does anybody know who I'm talking about so far? I'd like to make this an interactive session. Okay, so I'll ask you when the time comes. So he asks himself out loud, he asks his coworker the question, what would happen if from this clock I was to move away at the speed of light? What would happen? So, and I want to try to make this because this is for people who, for the youth, how to get into your dream college or program. So I'm just going to try to pick on you guys a little bit more, especially if there's Nasarat or young Lajna upstairs as well. Feel free to chime in. Did any of the Atfal or young Khudam know who this person was? No guess? Okay. So long story short, the person who was that boy, no Khalid, not you, the person in that photo and the person who was asking this question was Einstein. And the question he asked that day soon helped him discover the theory of relativity. And later that year, he discovered the famous equation E = mc squared. I thought a lot about this topic that Sohail Bhai assigned me, how to get into your dream college or training program. I really thought a lot about it. The National Taaleem Department many times has hosted webinars on the same topic. And in those webinars, we've talked about how to get your resume right, the classes you need to take, if you should or should not take AP classes, whatever the case may be, those X's and O's questions. So instead of repeating that information, and also because those discussions take hours, I asked myself, what's the best way I can provide value to this audience? And so what I thought we should talk about today, what we should focus on, is the attitude you need if you're a student, or if you're the parent of a student, the attitude you need to get into your dream program. And that's why I started with this discussion on Einstein's childhood and his early adulthood. Because from his life, we find out that there's 3 things you need if you want to get into your dream program. So the first thing you need is what a Stanford academic, one of Sohail Bhai's colleagues, a Stanford academic, has coined as a growth mindset. So what's a growth mindset? So I'm going to poll the audience here. On a scale of whether you strongly agree or strongly disagree. That's the scale, okay? The question is, you can learn new things, but you can't really change your basic intelligence. All right, that's the question. How many of you, by a raise of hands, and Lajna, we can't see you, but you're more than welcome, encouraged, in fact, to participate. How many of you would strongly agree with this statement? That you can learn new things, but you can't really change your intelligence. Nobody agrees with this statement. If you have to be honest, the game doesn't work otherwise. 2 or 3 people, 5 people, okay. And how many of you would disagree with this statement or strongly disagree with this statement? Okay, so 50% of the audience is undecided. All right. So if you have a growth mindset, you would strongly disagree with this statement. And the reason you would strongly disagree with the statement is that you'd say that aside from whatever intelligence we've been given at birth, whatever genetic predispositions we have, hard work can actually affect to a great degree how intelligent we are. And more importantly, it also affects how you look at failure and hardship. A person with a growth mindset doesn't look at hardship and failure as something that is somehow is a poor reflection on themselves. All it tells them is that these are factors that I need to look out for, and these are factors that I need to improve on. And that's why, again, I started with this story about Einstein, because Einstein did have a growth mindset. Now, some of you who know Einstein's story might object here and say, what are you talking about? The guy, when the clock story I mentioned happened, he was not even 30 years old. So he was not even 30, he was still a khadim. If he was in the Jamaat, he wouldn't have even been a Nasir, and he had already figured out E equals MC squared. So clearly the man was a genius. What are you talking about? It's true he was a genius, but he wasn't a lazy genius. And that's the main point. That if Einstein had decided that the hardships I'm experiencing or the shortcomings I have are a reflection on me being dumb or me not being capable enough, he wouldn't have gotten anywhere. And that we know from his biography that he did face these challenges and he overcame them. And similarly, he says himself about his speech impediment. He says that if I had not had this period of time around from age 0 to around age 6, if I had not had this time to not talk, I would not have focused more on space and the nature of space and time. So he actually looked at his disadvantages as advantages. So the first thing is, I want to emphasize this for all the students here. The first thing you need to have, if you want to get into your dream program, is you have to have a growth mindset. The second thing you need to do is to think long-term. Again, I want to ask somebody here this question. If I was to ask, what's your name? Sorry? Ariz, A-R-I-Z? Okay, so A-A-R-I-Z, okay. So Ariz, if I was to ask you, I'm going to give you a hypothetical, okay? Hypothetical is that I will give you any task, whether it's music or math or cooking, whatever the task is, okay? Yeah, I'll give you 1 year of time to improve on this task. And I will tell you that every day you will improve by 1%, only 1% on this task, okay? After 1 year's time, how much better do you think you would be at that task? Would you be 1% better, double as good, triple as good? How much do you think? 50% better, so double. Double is good, right? So actually the data shows that you'd be almost 38 times better at that task if you only improve by 1% every day. And the other cool thing is that you'd be at an exponentially improved curve afterwards. So if you kept going, it wouldn't be that you'd be 38 times and 39 times. You'd be 40 or 50 or 100 times better at that task, only if you stuck to the principle that I improved by 1% daily. And the opposite, by the way, is also true. If you, the other curve on the graph, if you regressed by 1% every day, the data shows that at the end of that same year, you would be at almost a zero. You would be basically a novice at that same skill, even if you started out kind of high. So the reason I mention this, the reason why I'm mentioning this in the context of long term, is that a lot of times when you want to get to these upper echelons in the academic world, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. Hazur said this himself, that it takes a great effort over a long period of time. And during that interim, it can become discouraging sometimes. You can ask a lot of people here, so held by anybody, there must have been times when they had not gotten to their goal, and the burden of the work, the lack of results makes you feel discouraged. I see some people nodding. I know that are successful in their field are nodding their heads that yes, this is the case. So when that type of thing happens, what you need to do is focus on the incremental improvements, that 1% change. And if you do that, then the end goal, is you should be reassured that you're going to reach it. Like the hadith, Ahabbu amali indallahi adwamuha wa in kalla. Okay, Allah loves that which is done consistently, even if it is small. So that's the second point, is to think long term by focusing on short term micro wins. And the third thing you need to do, Jawad bhai, I'll ask you if you're hearing me to click on this link in a second. The third thing that you need to do is to do what you love. So we know that Einstein, whatever hardships he had in life, the one thing that he obsessed over was math. And the reason he obsessed over it was because he loved it. That much is also on record. So this is also something that you need to focus on. If we can play that clip, because it's not just Einstein who had this view, someone far more important has the same view. It's not. I'll just summarize what Hazur said for interest of time. Hazur basically said the same thing, that what you should do, and anytime anybody asks me this question, is I tell them that you should do what interests you. Hazur also made a caveat. He said that doesn't mean that you just do badmashi, you just do silly things, but you should pursue what you love. That's the gist of the video, and afterwards it'll be available for anybody who wants to hear the whole clip. So anyways, these are the three principles I want to leave you with, or summarize this talk with, if you want to get into your dream program. Number one, you need to have a growth mindset. Number two, you need to think long-term. And number three, you need to do what you love. And in closing, I want to emphasize one thing. We're talking to Ahmadi Muslims here. Ahmadi Muslim students and the parents of Ahmadi Muslim students should be reassured that this is very, very attainable. And the reason why is because it's actually in our blood. What do I mean by that? So Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam in 1894, just a couple years after that photo of Einstein was taken, he says something incredible. I mean, really, really incredible. He says, Meri sarisht mein nakami ka khamir nahi. That defeat is not a part of my nature. I want to poll the audience again. I want to ask you, in the early 1900s, we know Hazrat Masih Maud had a following of a couple 100,000 people. This is on record. So 1894, just a couple years earlier, he's already acclaimed he's the Masih Maud. At this time, he makes this statement. So how many people do you think in 1894, when he makes this statement, how many Ahmadi Muslims do you think there are in the world at this time? If in early 1900s, he had about a couple 100,000, 300,000 at least. Anybody, somebody got to give me some guess. 1,000 people? Okay, how many? How about you in the sweatshirt? Yes, you were standing up. I'm looking right at you with the mask. 30? Okay. Well, there was 40 at bat, so he had more than 40, right? 1,500? Okay. And last guess, yes. 5,000? Okay. So he actually only had 300 followers at this time. I think about the vision that I have only 300 followers. I've claimed to be Masih. Every world religion, the leaders are against me. The government is against me. And at this time, he says that their defeat is not a part of my nature. This is an incredible statement. And the reason I mention it is because the life of Hazrat Masih Maud, and this statement in particular, embodies all three of those principles. We know that despite whatever setbacks he had in his life, whatever hardships he's had, he never looked at it as a reflection on himself. A specific example, we know Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Murtaza thought for many years, Nauzubillah, that his son would be a failure. He never internalized that as a poor reflection on himself. Number two, we know about his legendary work ethic. And we know that he had this legendary work ethic despite the fact that he suffered from poor physical health throughout his life. And number three, we know that despite everything else, successes he had in his life, the one thing that dominated his being was love for Allah and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. All three of those principles are in his life, and they're embodied in this statement. Meri sarisht mein nakami ka khamir nahi. So one thing I want to caveat, just like Salman Bhai said, these are personal views, these are not official views. I can't say that Hazrat Masih Maud used this rubric throughout his life as a means of success. What I can say is that his life and this statement doesn't contradict those three principles. That I can definitely say. So for those Ahmadi Muslim students that are here, or the parents of Ahmadi Muslim students, if there's one message I want you to take away from today, if you're focused on getting into your dream college or program, it's this. It's to internalize this statement of Hazrat Masih Maud, that defeat is not a part of my nature. If you do that, then getting into your dream program is a near eventuality. Assalamu alaikum.